Hello and welcome to the Final Frontiersmen. I'm your host Bill, and this is Lesson 3 of our Star Trek Adventures Academy series. In Lessons 1 and 2, we talked about the basic mechanics of how to play the game, what more or less makes up the majority of your time playing the game, and Lesson 2 was about the two currencies, the player currency, momentum, and the GM currency, threat. In this lesson, we are going to be talking about the advanced rules, the slightly more complex tasks and mechanics that you will come across in the game. Maybe not all the time, but they will appear, and it's going to be very important to know it. So in this episode, we're going to be talking about things like opposed tasks, the different challenges, and we're going to end with something that confuses a lot of players when they are new to the game, or even when they don't really have enough experience with it, the extended tasks. So as always, if I say anything that's incorrect or I leave out something crucial that should be mentioned, please make a comment down below or get in touch with me. I will put an addendum somewhere. Let me jump into the small video and let's get this lesson underway. Again, Lesson 3, Advanced Rules. We're going to start off with opposed tasks. Just like in any role-playing game, when you have two different characters, two different sides, trying to either do the same thing or stop one another from doing something, you make an opposed role. Star Trek Adventures is no different from that. You may find the mechanics here somewhat similar to other role-playing games where there's an opposed mechanic. In this, you have the two characters, one who is attempting a goal, one who is trying to prevent that character from succeeding in that goal. The character who is making the attempt to succeed is called the active character, and the character who is trying to prevent that character from succeeding is known as the reactive character. Just the terminology for the sake of the explanation. So the way it is done is no different from any other task role in the game. You have your attribute and your discipline combined. You make a roll against your difficulty, and that's that. Very, very simple. Now, both sides, the active character and the reactive character, may have an entirely different pairing of attribute and discipline, depending on what they're trying to do. And they will possibly and most likely have a different difficulty as well. So it's not like the two sides rolling against each other and comparing their roles to one another. They are each individually rolling their own task on it. So again, the GM will decide what attribute and discipline goes together and what your difficulty is. As I said, this is a completely normal task roll. All the rules apply. You could use momentum, threat, whatever it is that you wouldn't use in a normal task roll. It all applies here. So who is the winner in the opposed task roll? Well, very simply, whoever wins the roll. So if only one player wins on their task, they succeed at their task, and the other player doesn't, clearly the player who succeeds, that's the winner of the opposed roll. If they both fail the roll, that's also very simple. They fail, so the active character, I should say, does not achieve their goal. It's not so much that the reactive player wins, it's that the active player failed to achieve their goal. So by default, the reactive player succeeds. However, it's more or less that neither side was able to do what they wanted, including the action that kicked this off in the first place. Now, the slightly more complex nature comes in for when both active character and reactive character succeed at their task rolls. So you go into a tiebreaker. The tiebreaker is, in that situation, whoever generated the most momentum from their task roll. So you compare the two rolls. Whoever got the most momentum is the winner and succeeds, whether it's the active character or the reactive character. Whoever generated the most momentum. Now, the little tricky part is, unlike other task rolls, when you generate momentum, you either can use it or you can bank it. Since this is an opposed roll and the momentum is more or less used as a tiebreaker, what you do is the winning side whether it's active or reactive, it doesn't matter. Whoever is the winning side has the most momentum. You subtract the amount of momentum generated by the losing side, and whatever is left over, that's what the winning player keeps, banks, uses, whatever it is for their momentum. So even if both sides generate momentum, they don't get to keep that. It's only the excess over the loser that the succeeding player, or succeeding character, because it could be a GM, the succeeding character would keep, would bank. Now, in some situation where they both succeed and they both generate the same amount of momentum, which could in fact be 0, the tie is broken in favor of the active character. They will be considered to have succeeded at their goal. That's it. It's pretty straightforward. Opposed tasks, again, one more time as a rundown. The active character is the one initiating it. They are trying to achieve something. The reactive character is trying to stop them. Both sides do their own task roll for this particular situation. The pair of attribute and discipline is chosen for each side, as well as the difficulty set individually for each side. You do a normal task roll. If it's only one player succeeds, they win. If both players fail, the reactive side wins. If both players succeed at their task, you look at the momentum, you cancel out momentum 1 for 1 on each side. Whoever has any momentum left over, that is the winning side, and they keep that momentum. And finally, if everything is equal, both succeed, both have the same amount of momentum, the active player is the winner. That is opposed tasks. Not too hard. We're not into the difficult stuff yet. The next one is not so much a type of task roll, but I think this is the best part to introduce it now that those, I would say, all the general tasks are out of the way. This is a mechanic called success at cost. And again, other role-playing games do feature this. This is nothing unique to Star Trek Adventures, but success at cost is a way for the GM to allow players to succeed even if they have failed their task roll. So what happens is, and I would say this isn't used frequently, but maybe in the situation where it's very crucial. Maybe failing the task roll would kill the player, or crash the shuttle and maybe kill a bunch of players, or do something very bad for the story. There's always the option for success at cost. What that is, the GM automatically gives a complication to the player who failed the roll, but the roll is considered, or the task roll I should say, is considered to have been successful. So even though the player failed, the GM gives an automatic complication to it, but they succeed. And this makes sense because yes, they achieved what they wanted to do, but something has gone catastrophically wrong, represented by the complication. Now, it might even be really big. It could be something major, so the GM might apply more than one complication. Say you could succeed at cost for this action, however, it's going to be 2 complications or 3 complications. And because this is sort of a deal between the players and the GM, the players can refuse it. So if the players say, no, I'd rather just fail the roll than to take all these complications, that's on them. However, the option is there. And as I said, usually for something really, really big, you wouldn't normally push this in most situations. But if success is crucial and the players couldn't get it on their own, this option exists to keep the game going, to keep the story going, while still being thematic by having, of course, complications come into it. The one little rule point on success at cost is, even though the players are considered to have succeeded at this task roll, they are not allowed to spend momentum or whatever to enhance the victory or to enhance the level of success, because they, well, honestly, they did not succeed. It's being given to them. So they take the success, they take the automatic complication, including any other natural complications that got rolled on that failed die roll that failed the task anyhow. This is one more additional complication at least that's added in. Success at cost. There we go. The next set of, I would say these still aren't really difficult at all, but they are called challenges. And what challenges are basically any situation in the game that your players will run into that cannot be solved by one single task. So a challenge is any kind of situation that takes at least 2 tasks to complete. Not too hard to understand, right? So a basic challenge is at least 2 or more tasks. These tasks are called key tasks. So there might be a range or length of time where these complications are, or not complication, excuse me, where these challenges are occurring, where maybe other tasks can also be completed. But the tasks that are specifically connected to the challenge are called key tasks. And when the player has completed every key task in the challenge, that challenge is complete. There is what's called a linear challenge, and a linear challenge sets the order that these key tasks have to be completed in. So this is something that you can't jump to the back of the line. It's very specific. You have to do this, to do this, to do this, such as maybe shutting down or restarting a warp core. You have to follow a strict procedure of what steps before you could do the next step. So each step of the way is a key task, but you must complete it in a very linear order, hence linear challenge. The next challenge is, no, I wouldn't even describe it as more difficulty, but it's called a gated challenge. And the thing to keep in mind about gated challenges are, of the multiple key tasks, some of them are locked behind the gate of other key tasks. So you can't do this task until you complete this task. And it might be any combination. You have to complete task A, B, and C before you open the gate to task D. Gated challenges set more or less levels of tasks. So you have to get through the first level of tasks before you could get to the second level, before you can get to the third, and so on. It might be one each. It might be one leads to multiple. It might be multiple leads to one. However works best for your group. I believe the example in perhaps the Klingon core rulebook was about trying to build shelter for survival. So you have things like you're lost in the wilderness. You need to gather supplies to build the shelter. You need to hunt for food, for sustenance. You need to make a fire. So in that situation, you could make the fire anytime. That's not going to be gated behind anything aside from maybe finding materials if you don't have it already. But building a shelter, if you didn't have the shelter already, you would have to probably complete the key task of finding the resources first, clearing out an area, then building the shelter. So one task is gated behind another. That's a gated challenge. Not very hard to understand, but sometimes the terminology trips up players. So it's just another way of phrasing the situation that you have to complete one set before you can access the next set. I don't think that's too hard. The next challenges are called group challenges, which shockingly require group effort to complete. So a group challenge, the special rules for the group challenge are that if a player is performing a task or assisting a task in the group challenge, they are not able to assist in another key task of that group challenge because they are already occupied doing one key task. So that is pretty much the only special rules for a group challenge. So, and you might start to realize now a lot of these kind of challenges could fall into more than one category. A group challenge could be a gated challenge. A group challenge could be a linear challenge. A gated challenge could be a linear challenge as well. So don't be afraid to mix and match all of these things, but they just have little specific details such as can only work on one task at a time. If it's a group challenge, everyone's doing their part. Can't mix until the challenge is completed. The next, and I believe the last main type of challenge, there is the time challenge. And this one I think is very important. I think this one is very interesting. And this one's maybe the most complex out of all the challenges. It more or less adds a sense of time pressure into a regular basic challenge. GM would set time limit, possibly a limit of attempts, but for this a time challenge, you would set a time limit. There would be a number of intervals that this time limit is broken down into. So, for example, you could have this challenge you only have 10 minutes to complete the challenge. So the GM sets a 10-minute time limit, and he breaks it into 1-minute intervals. So there are 10 intervals of 1 minute each for this task to get done in 10 minutes total before you fail automatically. How this works, and this is where it's slightly complex. So the important point is every task that you do, every key task that you do, especially in this challenge, uses 2 intervals. Whatever the time is that you set, our example, we said each interval is 1 minute. So the first task that is attempted for this challenge will eat up 2 minutes, 2 intervals. So it always takes 2 intervals. So in this case, our 1-minute intervals, it takes 2 of them. So each task will take 2 intervals. So that would give you basically 5 tries to get this challenge completed. There are ways where you can use momentum, 2 points of momentum, to cut that interval down to only 1. But also likewise, the GM can use a complication to bump the intervals up +1. So it's possible that you could save time by spending momentum to use only 1 interval for the task. But also if you roll a challenge, it's possible it took you a lot longer to do that task than you expected. So maybe instead of 2 intervals, it took you 3 intervals. So 3 of your 10 minutes was wasted instead of 2. But again, with momentum, you might be able to knock it down to 1 instead of 2. So there are ways of trying to balance it when you need time. But this time limit aspect has to apply to the whole story as well. So there might be other things going on that are not key tasks in a time challenge, but you have to keep the time limit in mind. So if what's happening with a side task, maybe another player is doing a task to establish an advantage for the time challenge, this is going to take time too. So the GM will have to factor in that this is also using up 2 intervals. It may not always work that way. It might be that something that could be done on the side that's not going to eat away at it. But you should keep these intervals contained inside the whole duration of the challenge. Otherwise, it runs the risk of being abused, where players could potentially say, well, I'm not part of the challenge. I'm doing this in background. I'm going to give an advantage. Well, I'm not part of the challenge. I'm going to do this in the background and give another advantage. So consider everything part of the time challenge to be eating away intervals, and apply it at however you see fit for your game. So those are the basics of challenges. Very simply, challenge is anything that uses more than one task to complete. There are many types of challenges that pretty much mix and match. They could be anything linear. You have to follow a certain order to complete all of the key tasks. Gated challenges, you have to finish some key tasks before you can get to the other key tasks. But otherwise, they may not be linear. There's the group challenge, where if one character is working on one key task, they are not going to be able to contribute to a different key task. And the time challenges, where you break things down into intervals. It could be hours broken into intervals, minutes broken into intervals, seconds broken into intervals, whatever makes sense for that situation. And every task that is complete eats up 2 of those intervals, unless that's modified by momentum or threat. Challenges. Use them. Okay. So this is where we're going to what I would say is the difficult part. And I don't like to use that word, but this is probably the one mechanic that has given the most trouble to more players and GMs out there, myself included. I had to read this section many, many times in the core rulebook, the original core rulebook, which unfortunately I don't think, and I believe many people will agree with me, but the original core rulebook did not explain this as clearly and concisely as I would have liked. But when it clicked, it made sense. I still screwed it up a few times in practice, but when it clicked, it made sense, and I really love the mechanic. I'm talking about, of course, the extended tasks. So, if I may, let me try to get through just reminding you what extended tasks are and the important points, and hopefully without screwing it up. So I might be taking a little closer look at my notes to make sure I don't forget anything important than usual. So please bear with me. Look at whatever graphic I'm putting up on the screen right now. Maybe it's nicer than me. So let's figure this out. So extended tasks. These are the tasks that are used to represent very large problems, very large situations happening in the game, but there is a clear objective. The thing is, these tasks, much like challenges, cannot be completed with just one dice roll. Usually, some situations maybe, but they are designed to require multiple tasks, multiple attempts before you can get to the end of this task. It's like a very, very, very large task. So that's the way it kind of differs from a challenge. It might not be multiple different key tasks. It might be the same thing, but it's such a massive task that you are working at it for a while. That's an extended task. The way a lot of people describe it, and rightfully so, is view it as combat versus a task, rather combat versus a character. You are fighting the situation. You are fighting the action you are attempting to achieve. That is what an extended task is, and the reason why it's like combat, you'll notice very, very soon if you haven't noticed already. One key point, though, about extended tasks, while there's a lot of ways to use them, and there's a lot of ways that you could stretch them out over games, multiple sessions, that's very possible. But for in-the-moment situations, for big dramatic situations, you should not use an extended task unless there is some sort of pressure on the players, and some sort of time pressure or dramatic pressure that this extended task is connected to. Otherwise, it's just going to turn into a dice throwing session. You want to make sure there is a clear and definite reason why what they are doing is an extended task and not a regular task or a challenge. That's a key point to keep in mind. But first, before we get into how to do the extended task, we have to talk about the parts of an extended task. This is where it gets a little complicated, but I assure you it is not hard. And if you're having trouble with it, once it clicks, I think you'll find it very useful and very fun to use. So here we go. Parts of an extended task. First, there is the work track. In later editions, it's known as the stress track, just like your player has stress. And that's pretty much what it is. The work track is how much work is involved in completing this task. in general. This is how much work you have to try to get done to be successful, or at least to get close enough to the end that you can finish it up. It's very similar to stress, to shields on a starship. You chip away at them and you can hit the target. So the more work you do, the easier it is to accomplish what you are doing. So the work track, look at them as shield points. The work track or stress track, whatever you want to call it as. It's how much is involved in completing the task. Work track is usually between 5 and 20. I would say never put it under 5. There's really no point in doing that. And I would say rarely put it over 25 unless the situation you're running calls for it. 5 to 20 is perfect. You don't really need to mess with that at all. 5 to 10 would be for a standard, not too difficult task. 10 to 15 is your more standard, average, a little tricky task. Definitely going to take some work. 15 to 20, those are the tasks that are really going to be pushing the players. They need to get a lot more done before they succeed. So, with that said, the work track is a separate track you are just chipping away at as you're trying to complete the task. But getting the work track down to 0 does not succeed the extended task for you. That's getting the work out of the way that you need to accomplish to make achieving the task easier. But the way you succeed at the task is by finding, or I should say, achieving all of the breakthroughs required. So breakthroughs are the next part. They are a number of, I would say, the hits, the direct hits that you are applying to this action that need to be done to take down this boss in this boss battle. There is a magnitude value that you put on an extended task, and the magnitude value is the same number of breakthroughs that you have to achieve. Magnitude ranges between 1 and 5. 1 is almost, I would say, pointless, because it is something that could very, very easily be achieved in a single die roll, or task roll, I should say. And the whole idea of extended tasks are things that are a little too big to be done that easily. But there are some situations where it will make sense to use a 1 magnitude extended task, but it ranges up to 5 generally. You could, of course, push it beyond that, but standard, you would want to max out at 5 at most. And those are for the most arduous, difficult. Players are going to be struggling to complete extended tasks. So for each level of magnitude, that's how many breakthroughs need to be done in order to complete the extended task. So you might still have points in your stress track, your work track, but if you hit every single breakthrough that you're supposed to get, you succeed. So that's how you win an extended task. And the question is, how do you get breakthrough? And I will get to that in a moment. Let's finish the parts here. There's difficulty is a task, so it's going to have difficulty like any other task. Typically, difficulty is also set the same as magnitude to kind of represent, well, a task that has a magnitude that's large is going to have difficulty that's large. And there could be external circumstances like advantages, traits, complications, which change this difficulty later. But this is the general difficulty, the base difficulty you are setting for the task. Again, typically based on magnitude, but feel free to tweak it to whatever fits best for your extended task. And the last thing is resistance. Resistance is similar to the defense of a starship, or like the armor of a player, where it's going to absorb damage. In the case of extended task, resistance are the factors that are going to slow down your progress. These are things that are going to make it harder for you to complete the work to get the extended task done. So when you would be pulling points off the work track, the resistance cancels out some of the work that you are accomplishing. So for example, if you deal 4 points of work or stress to the work track, and there's 1 point of resistance on the extended task, it's going to eat up 1 of those 4 points. So you're only dealing 3 points, 3 hits onto the work track. That's all resistance is. It's pretty easy to understand. Resistance doesn't have to be part of every extended task. Only for the most difficult. Only for the ones that they require the extra effort because they're so challenging. Usually 0, 1, or 2 points, I would say, is standard for an extended task. From your usual to difficult to extremely difficult. It can go beyond that, and complications can push it beyond that. But setting it higher than 2 to begin with is going to be very hard for the players and very unfair for the players. So please keep that in mind. You don't need it every time, but when you do, I would not start higher than 2 if possible. 1 is usually good enough to slow them down considerably. So those are parts: work track or stress track, however you want to call it. That's how much shield points this task has to weaken it, to make it easier to defeat. Breakthroughs represent the magnitude, how big the task is, and that's how many direct hits you need to kill this task. That's the thing you're looking at, the breakthroughs. Difficulty, of course, that's how difficult it is to achieve the breakthroughs or achieve the chance to get breakthroughs. We're getting there. And resistance, if the task is especially difficult, there may be some resistance on there to slow you down in making progress on the work track. Those are the 4 main points right there. Now, let's go into attempting an extended task. I'm going to explain very briefly, as a reminder for those of you who read the book, how to do an extended task. Then, if you will allow me, I would like to show an example and run through an example on screen as soon as I'm done with this. Hopefully without screwing it up. Big ask on my part, but we'll see what happens here. So attempting an extended task, first of all, step 1, you're just making a task roll. Whatever the task involves, it's your standard usual task roll that you would make for anything in the game. So whoever the player is, they make the task roll. They have the difficulty already established with the extended task. You roll against that. If you succeed, you move on to step 2. If you fail, then, well, you managed to do nothing on that attempt. So once you succeed on your task roll for the extended task, that's only opening the door for you to attempt it. That means you're doing something, possibly. So you succeed at the task roll. Step 2, you're trying to see how much work you accomplish by succeeding at this task. This is where the stress track, the work track, comes into play. Now that you succeeded, you're going to roll the 6-sided challenge dice against the work track, the stress track for this extended task. The amount you roll is equal to 2 plus whatever the discipline is that you used in this task. So it's going to be typically between 1 to 5. So you'll be rolling anywhere between 3 to 7 dice against the work track. So the 6-sided dice, if you haven't seen them, is, which I'm sure you have, I hope you have, they have the values of 1 hit, 2 hits, 2 blank sides with nothing, and 2 hits that are the delta symbol or the Klingon badge, if you have the Klingon dice, which represents 1 hit plus an effect. Now, not every roll is going to have an effect, but in some situations where there are effects that come into play, it's when that symbol pops up that they trigger. Otherwise, they just count as a 1 hit in any other situation. And even when there's an effect, it's 1 hit plus effect. So if there's no effect, it's always going to be 1 hit. Don't forget that. Okay? So you succeed. You do 2 dice plus your discipline. You total them together. You roll. You count up how many hits you got. And that is the total amount of work you accomplished during that attempt at the extended task. And you look at how much work is required for the extended task, and you just tick that off. If I did 5 work and the extended task takes 10, I mark off I did 5 work out of 10. There's 5 more work remaining to do. 5 is already done. So you just use it to keep track. Now, if there's resistance, as I mentioned before, that will come off the work before you apply it to the track. So before you start checking off those boxes, see if there's any resistance on the roll. If there is, subtract it to however much work you did. Whatever is remaining, that's how much you did on the work track, stress track this time around. Once that's done, the next step is you are going to check for breakthroughs. So take a look at how much stress, how much work you've done on the track in this roll alone. If you have done 5 points of work after resistance, you've done 5 hits of work to apply to the work track or more. That's very important. 5 or more points, you achieve 1 breakthrough. And that's why it's important. 5 or more points, you achieve 1 breakthrough. Biggest mistake I see in this is players say every 5 points equal a breakthrough. It does not. 5 or more points gets you 1 breakthrough alone. So if you do that, you check off 1 breakthrough. Very, very good. If the work track, the stress track, hits 0 as you're applying the stress, you also achieve a breakthrough. So if you had only 3 points of stress left and you rolled your challenge dice and you did, again, let's say 5 points of stress after resistance, you count 1, 2, 3, you're at 0, the track is dead, you get a breakthrough. Now, let's say that it's already at 0. If the track is already at 0 before you apply stress to it, you're automatically gaining 1 breakthrough because all the work is done. You're just doing the finishing touches and gaining breakthroughs. So it's possible that you can achieve 2 breakthroughs in a single roll because you'll always get 1 breakthrough if you do 5 work, 5 stress after resistance. 5 or more, again, let me be clear with that, you'll always get 1 breakthrough. But if it hits 0, or it was already at 0 on the work track in those 5, then you are also gaining a 2nd breakthrough. So it's possible to get up to 2 breakthroughs, sometimes even more with other special effects that might come into play, but generally you could get a maximum of 2 breakthroughs on a single roll of the challenge dice to inflict stress. Let me just take a look real quick. Let me make sure I'm not forgetting anything else on here that I want to point out. Okay, so the next thing is once you apply your breakthroughs, you're going to check the magnitude, or however you are keeping track of this. If the number of breakthroughs that you have achieved total is equal to whatever the magnitude is for this extended task, the task is over, you succeeded. If it's a magnitude 4 extended task and you hit your 4th breakthrough, it's done. It's over, you win. So make sure you check after you apply the breakthroughs every time. If it's not complete, you get to lower the difficulty of the task by 1 point for each breakthrough that you earned. So if on one turn I earn 1 breakthrough, I knock that difficulty down by 1. If on the next turn I hit 2 breakthroughs, I knock it down 2 more points. If the task is, of course, still going on, once I hit the final breakthrough, it doesn't matter, we succeeded, the task is over. One special note, a very important note that doesn't always come into play, but it's good to keep in mind, it's possible for the difficulty of the extended task to hit 0 before you are actually done with it. You might still have 1 or 2 more breakthroughs to go, but the difficulty is at 0. That's very possible. So what happens is where you just do a regular task roll at difficulty 0, but if there's still breakthroughs remaining, there's still magnitude left, if you gain a breakthrough when the difficulty is already at 0 and the task is not complete, what that does is it adds an additional challenge die to your future rolls in generating hits to go against the work track. So that's another important thing to keep in mind. It adds an additional challenge die, not an additional hit. So you'll roll 1 more die. Let's say it's 2 plus your discipline. Let's say your discipline was 5. You're amazing. So that's 7. But you already had 0 difficulty. You got a previous breakthrough. That gives you 1 more additional dice. Your next roll, you're rolling 8 challenge dice against it. It's a very minor thing. It's a very minor detail. And it's probably going to be very rare in your experience with extended tasks. But it's good to keep in mind. So that's why I'm mentioning it. So again, I know it's tricky. Please let me run through this again. What it is, you roll your task. If you're successful, you take 2 plus your discipline in 6-sided challenge dice. You roll that, you count up your hits. Whatever the total is, subtract any resistance to the extended task from that total. Anything that's left over, take that out of the work track. If you have a total of 5 or more still after resistance, that's a breakthrough. If the stress track, the work track, hits 0 as you're applying your hits, that's a breakthrough. If the If the track was already at 0 before you started to apply your hits, any hit that's applied to it, any work, any stress applied to it, gives you breakthrough. And just let me point out, that's not for each point. It's the act of applying stress to it that gives you breakthrough. So if you're at 0 and you score 4 hits, it's like, wow, 4 breakthroughs. No, it's just 1 breakthrough. And again, if any multiple versions of those situations apply at the same time, you're going to get both breakthroughs. Okay? That is how an extended task is done. And of course, yeah, as soon as the breakthroughs equal the magnitude, it's over. Succeeded. Now, there are some momentum spends and there's some complications that are specific to extended tasks. For here, let's see, the momentum spends are, you can spend 1 point of momentum repeatable to add 1 stress to the work pool. Now, the note to keep on this is, unlike before where I said, oh, you have 0 difficulty, but you get breakthrough, that's 1 more challenge dice. This is not a die, this is 1 more point. So you're not buying more dice, you're buying actual hits on the stress track. So every point of momentum will give you 1 more hit, not 1 more die. Keep that in mind. Another momentum spend for extended tasks are the piercing. Piercing is usually one of the best things to buy with momentum, especially if there's resistance, especially if there's high resistance on your extended task. 1 point of piercing will cancel up to 2 points of resistance. So if there's 3 resistance, 1 momentum will cut that down to 1. 2 momentum will take that to 0. Okay, it doesn't give you a bonus over, it just kills the resistance. 1 point of momentum to buy 1 point of piercing. That cancels 2 points of resistance. And the last momentum spend specifically for extended tasks are re-rolling the challenge dice, the 6-side challenge dice. This again is 1 momentum, but this one is not repeatable. Unlike the previous 2, this one you can only do once. You spend 1 momentum, you can re-roll any number of your 6-sided challenge dice. And then whatever comes up from that, you make your total, resistance, blah, blah, blah. Finish the job. Okay, now complications for extended tasks for the GMs or for the players who want to know. Any complication that's rolled on extended task, you could just treat as a normal complication as you would for any other task. But there are 2 that are particular to extended tasks. One is called dead end, which removes 4 of the work accomplished by the players. So whatever work they've done, you could spend 1 complication that they roll to just knock off 4 of that work. So again, go to our example. I did 5 work. It's a 10-point stress track. I knocked off half of it, but I got a complication. The GM decides to implement the dead end. So 4 of those come back. So I'm back to 9, basically. The second specific one for extended task is called unforeseen problems, which increases the resistance of the task by 2, up to a maximum of 4. So if it's a 0 task or a 0 resistance task, it could bump up to 2. If it's already 2, it could bump up to 4. If it's at 3, it would bump up to 4 because that's the maximum. Okay? So that, in a nutshell, is how to do extended tasks. It's a little involved and it confuses a lot of people, but once you get the hang of it, this is sort of second nature. It just plays out smoothly. As I said, I would like to take you through an example, so bear with me. I took the time, I sat down, I got some dice, I just set up a scenario, and I just re-rolled or rolled as an extended task, just a solo experience doing it, and I wrote down the result, and I'm going to basically show you what I did, narrate through it. So if you will join me in our practical lab, wherever that is, I will show you what I did. So please come with me. Okay, welcome to the lab. This is where we are going to be doing our little demonstration here, so hopefully this works. I created an extended task tracker on Google Sheets to better demonstrate all the things I'm going to talk about, because I want to show you step by step what is taking place inside this extended task. So instead of just listening to me rattle it off and try and keep it in mind, hopefully having it on screen will make it a little more clear if you're still confused on it. Now, this task I rolled up by myself, sitting down playing solo, just to test it out, to work through it and see what would happen. And I'm going to show you what the results were of this roll. Now, this is going to be completely devoid of the narrative that would be involved if you're role-playing. GMs, if you're doing an extended task, have the narrative always be number 1. Have it continuing during the task, between the task rolls all the time. Have multiple players chipping in, doing stuff. Have variety. I'm not doing that. I'm just having one character doing the same role again and again, just to demonstrate the mechanics and the step-by-step. So the situation for this task is there is a ship that is damaged. The warp core is going to explode. It's drifting into a dangerous anomaly, and the Enterprise is desperately trying to beam them aboard within 10 minutes before the core explodes, and it's up to our intrepid engineer, Geordi LaForge. So Geordi is going to lead the task. It's a transporter task. He has control of 8 and engineering of 5. It's a control plus engineering task, so he is rolling against 13. He also has a focus for transporters, so anything 5 or under is going to be 2 successes. He is going to be assisted by the Enterprise because we are using the Enterprise's systems of transporters, so it gets the assist. Sensors plus engineering, that is a total of 11. And as a starship, focuses always apply. So I will go through step by step what this task is and what I rolled on each roll to show you how it played out. Now, this is a magnitude of, it's going to be a big task. I thought it's going to be challenging. It's only Geordi doing it for some reason. It's going to be challenging. So I gave it a magnitude of 4, which I'm going to put right there in the magnitude box. And as you can see, we need 4 breakthroughs in order to succeed at this task. Because it's magnitude 4, I'm also giving it a difficulty of 4. And there we go. And that sets our current difficulty with no modifiers right now to 4. As it is a big task and there's interference from overloading engines on the ship, the anomaly that's causing damage to it, that's interfering. So it's going to slow down Geordi's work. I'm giving this a 2 resistance, which is pretty bad. As I said, 2 is probably the max you want to do, and rarely. But for the sake of this example, 2 it is. And as you can see down here, that's going to take off 2 from the total work rolled. Attempts remaining, we're not doing attempts, we're going to do timed interval, only 10 minutes, so I'm putting 10 in there. I will manage that manually. For the sake of simplicity, 0 momentum in the pool, 0 threat in the pool currently. That's where we stand. And as there's a large number of people on this ship that needs evacuated, I'm saying a work track of 15. So there we go. So just jumping around now. So work track of 15, difficulty 4, magnitude 4, resistance of 2, 10 intervals. We're going to say 1 minute each for the intervals for the sake of the narrative. So here we go. Geordi is going to make his task roll against difficulty of 4. He rolls a 9, an 8, a 3, and a 20. The 3 gets 2. The 9 and 8 gets 1 success, so he rolled 4 successes, but that 20 is a complication. The Enterprise chips in, rolling an 8. That's a total of 5 successes on the roll. We only need a difficulty of 4, so that is 1 momentum in our pool. So good for us there. However, I forgot to say how he rolled that. I apologize, I jumped straight ahead. I wanted, because it's such a high difficulty, I want him rolling 4 dice, and that's what he did, and I just didn't tell you why. So I actually bought 2 extra dice with 3 threat. I always recommend that players, when the difficulty's high, get those extra dice. Get those extra dice by any means necessary. Don't be scared of threat. It's not there to destroy you. It's there to make things interesting, but you need those successes. So 2 dice bought with 3 threat. That's how he rolled 4. Apologies, I forgot to explain that. So that's where we stand now. 1 momentum, 3 threat. Current difficulty is 4, but we got the 5 successes. So rolling the work dice. Geordi managed to get 2 hits and 3 effects, but there are no effects in play, so they just count at 1 hit alone. So that is 5 hits on the work rolled. Resistance takes it down to 2, so let's just spend our momentum. As you may remember, momentum, you could do additional work. We don't want that with just 1 point. Piercing was going to take off 2 points of resistance. So yes, 1 momentum. We will gladly spend our momentum to add 1 piercing. So bye-bye momentum. So there we go. Because of that, it allows us to do all 5 points of work, which 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, bam, there we go. And as you know, 5 or more work done after resistance is a breakthrough. So if I just click breakthrough number 1, takes us to difficulty 3. And now it's a good idea to also, as a GM, have an idea what each breakthrough represents. Like, for example, I could say that this breakthrough means that the engineer on the target ship is now at the controls and doing his best to compensate from his side, making things a little bit easier so Geordi can beam the survivors over faster, more efficiently, cut through the interference, whatever it is. You should have some idea what each breakthrough represents to help with the narrative. For this example, I'm going to cut that out. So the first attempt is done. That takes 2 off of our intervals because every attempt uses 2 intervals. Work is finished. The piercing is now gone. So we are back to where we started. Oh, but how can I forget? We rolled a complication, or Jordy rolled a complication. So we want to make use of the unforeseen problem. Increase the extended task resistance by 2, up to a maximum of 4. We're already at 2, but we're making life harder for Jordy now because he did so well in the very first roll. So we're going to see if we can make him sweat a little bit for roll number 2. And that's exactly what we do. Jordy's doing one more threat to get that 3rd die. He's rolling 3 dice now, getting a 2, an 11, and another 20 he got, unfortunately. So that is 3 successes for him and 1 complication. The Enterprise, no help with only a 16, so no successes there. 3 successes, 1 complication, no extra momentum generated. That's pretty grim with the -4 now, so I'm kind of regretting adding that in at this time. So rolling on the work track, Jordy managed to get 5 hits and 2 effects, so 7 hits total. So there we go, 7 hits total, which is only 3 work, and we have no piercing, so all 4 of that resistance takes it down to 3. That's pretty bad. That's pretty grim. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, that's pretty bad. And like I said, we rolled a complication again, and this is where I decide, since we're already maxed out at our 4 resistance, remove 4 points of work from the work track. Ouch. So 1, 2, 3, 4. We're down to 4. We're down to even less than we were at when we got our massive breakthrough. So that is tragic. And that also used 2 more of our precious minutes. So we're down to 6. The work is done. Things aren't looking too good for Jordy right now. Or, well, I should say things aren't looking too good for those people on the ship. Jordy's doing fine there. He's relaxing on the Enterprise. All right, going into roll 3. Difficulty 3 still. Jordy, he needs the extra dice. Like I said, get those dice. Worry about the threat later. So rolling 3 dice. And, of course, my luck, I managed to roll a 20, a 2, and a 10. So, yeah, Jordy gets 3 successes again, but he gets a 3rd complication. My word. But the Enterprise, at least, is our friend this time. It rolls a 3, generating 1 success on its own, giving us 4 successes, which, thankfully, gives us the momentum to use as we see fit. And I think we know what we're going to do with that. And we still have a complication to deal with. So, rolling our challenge dice, we get 8 hits, massively, plus 1 effect. No effects in play, so that's just 9 hits total. Cut down to 5, but we are going to, of course, spend our 1 point of momentum, get that 1 point of piercing back in for 7 work, which is beautiful. I will gladly take 7 work, so may I? 1, 2, 3, almost 4, 5, 6, and 7. Not too bad. Not too bad. So, that is breakthrough number 2, which lowers the difficulty down by to 2. Not too bad. But we do have a complication to deal with. So we are going to say that engineer that's helping us now, as things are getting bad over there, he gets injured. I will narrate that in some way or another, giving a difficulty modifier of 1 with the complication put into play. So I'm putting that in the extra difficulty modifiers there. So the difficulty is back up to 3. Too bad, Jordy. Sorry about that. And that was 2 more minutes taken down. So we're down to 4 intervals left. Uh-oh. All right, roll 3. But we are close. We are close to the end of the work track, but we still need 2 more breakthroughs. Come on, Jordy. Roll number 4. Excuse me. Roll number 4. Here we go. You know what Jordy's going to do. He needs some dice. Threat pulls up to 6. Now, the reason why I wasn't spending threat as a GM here doing this too is because, well, Jordy was just getting so many complications on his own, I figured, he's punishing himself. So let me leave this for something else. So that's why the threat pool is still building up. But GMs, don't be shy on dishing it out here and there, and especially if there's more players chiming in. But anyhow, going back to it, Jordy draws 3 dice. He rolls a 13, a 15, and a 13, so only 2 successes. But thankfully, the Enterprise barely scrapes by, getting us a 3rd success. So we do hit the 3 successes we need. Whew! So Jordy is going to, no momentum though. Jordy is going to roll his dice, his challenge dice, and he gets, I should have erased that from last time. Would that be nice if we had that again. 5 plus 2, so that is 7 work rolled. No piercing again this time. So the 4 resistance takes that down to 3. 1, 2, 3. Look at that. Look how miserable. 1 away. He could go 3rd breakthrough. Of course not. And that was 2 more minutes. Jordy has 2 minutes left, and it's going to take exactly 2 minutes to do this last task roll here. If he doesn't get enough momentum to slow down the intervals or to really succeed, there's people on that other ship are going to be in for a bad time. All right, so the work is now at 0. We're back at roll 5, difficulty of 3. Stop me if you heard this one. Jordy's buying a 3rd die with more threat because he has no momentum. We now have 7 threat. It's terrifying. Jordy rolls a 1, a 17, and a 10. Thank you for the 1, Jordy. So that is 3 successes there. He already got that. And the Enterprise, hey baby, rolls a 10. That's 1 success. That's 4. I will gladly take that momentum. That's going to go into piercing. We already know that right away. So he rolls the dice, and he gets 3 hits and 4 effects, which translates to 7 hits total. Jordy is spending that precious point of momentum on piercing, and look at that. 5 points of work done, only 1 point left in the stress track. Hits that, gets a 0. That is an automatic breakthrough for us, and we rolled 5 total. 5 or more gets us a breakthrough. We got 2 breakthroughs on that final roll just as the clock strikes 0. The extended task is complete. It is successful. And then just to be a crazy GM, I could say I'm spending 2 points of threat to say the ship explodes because they're right out of time. Jordy went right up to the goal. So 2 points of threat. Ship explodes. Enterprise is hit by the blast. Power is out. Let's say 2 more points. The ship is now thrown violently towards the anomaly that's going to put you in the same situation that the other ship was in. And, let's take 2 more and say even the gravity plane gets knocked out. So Jordy saved everyone on board, but now they are all free floating in pitch black darkness as the Enterprise spins to a dangerous, destructive anomaly. And that's where the rest of the mission will continue. But for now, that is the end of our little example. So that was the extended task. Jordy pulled it off at the end, and that's all the mechanics as they went. And let me come back in the video. That was it. Whew! Did that make sense? Now, with the extended task tracker that I made, I put a little too much time into it where I just wanted a visual to show you. But since I did put too much time into it, I'm going to have a link down below if you want to use it for yourself. Make your own copy or download it, whatever you want to do. Play around with it if you need that extra help to help you track extended tasks, because I know it is confusing at first until it clicks. So any resource that is helpful for you, I hope that works. I hope I didn't forget anything important, but yeah, this was a lesson on the advanced rules. Most of it is pretty easy. Extended tasks, I still say they're not hard. You just need to familiarize yourself with the terminology, with the language, and just with the flow. I love them. I use them a lot. I think they're one of the best tools for the game. I know there's a lot of GMs that disagree with me on this, but I think that's just because they're probably not introduced as well as they could have been in the original core rulebook. So give it a try. If you're still confused about extended tasks, write a message down below. Let's talk about it. Hopefully that demonstration was clear enough, but I do want to reiterate, when you do the task, do not do it like I did, like roll again, now roll again, now roll again. Put the narrative in there. Have all the players participating in their way or doing things on the side that is going to help, that is going to just add to whatever the situation is. Do not make it a roll fest, and try to use limited attempts, limited intervals, something with a time pressure, something where there is a definite goal that you need to achieve within a certain amount of time. Otherwise, you might as well just say they succeeded. If you're going to and say like, roll, not yet, roll, not yet, roll, you got it now. That's not going to be fun for anyone. Believe me, I've been in that situation and it wasn't fun for me. So I hope this was helpful. I hope it was helpful. I fear that it wasn't, but it was exceptionally long. I hope that if there's anything, all the timestamps down below, if there's anything you need to review, go back to it. Any questions, please ask me, but just have fun, knock yourself out. Star Trek Adventures is so freeform, and you are just able to do anything you want with the rules. Play around, make it fit your game. Take it, do what you want, have a good time. That's it. Thank you for joining this extra long lesson. Hopefully the next episode is a little bit more down to earth, easier to follow. And yeah, just thank you for joining in. Thank you for watching as always. Stay safe out there, my friends. I will catch you in the future. Live long and prosper. Peace and long life. Thanks.